Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have with us today Lawrence Joyce. He's a full-time practicing pharmacist and part-time pro-life attorney. And so we like this guy. And we're here to find out what is the whole deal with Ted Cruz citizenship controversy and where he may see this issue. So, Lawrence, good to see you. Happy New Year, my friend.
Well, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and all of your folks.
Yeah. Well, so you are filing a motion to remove Ted Cruz's name from the GOP primary ballot in Illinois. Why?
Well, I filed it, and my objection was just denied on Monday, by the way. The reason I filed it is that the Constitution requires one to be a natural-born citizen of the United States in order to be eligible to be president. It requires one to be a citizen to be senator or a citizen to be a member of the House, but there's a higher standard for being president. One must be a natural-born citizen. Now, natural-born citizenship simply boils down to this. It's citizenship which arises naturally. No intervention by the government is needed in order to cause one to be a citizen. When you're born within the territorial limits of the United States, you are a citizen naturally. Those who are born outside of the territorial limits of the United States have to become citizens, if they're going to become citizens at all, by intervention by the government, that is to say, by an act of Congress. So that's not natural-born citizenship, that is naturalization. Ted Cruz was born in Canada, and his mother was a U.S. citizen at the time, and under statute, Ted Cruz became a citizen at birth and has been a citizen of the U.S. continuously since birth. But citizenship by statute is not natural-born citizenship. Now, I had two reasons for going ahead with this. Principally, first of all, I would, in any event, prefer Dr. Ben Carson to be not only president, but I also think he'd be the best nominee of the Republican Party. But also, it occurred to me before I filed this, as I was mulling over whether or not I should go ahead with this, it occurred to me that if Ted Cruz becomes the nominee of the party, then, say, sometime around September, Democrats such as Congressman Alan Grayson of Florida will go ahead with his pledge to file a suit challenging Ted Cruz's eligibility. Now, the Democrats at that point, I think, will cherry pick whichever county clerk they will sue, or whichever Secretary of State, or whichever State Board of Elections in any county court that they want, in any state they would prefer, or in any federal district court they would prefer. They're liable to rack up a string of 3 or 4 or 5 victories in a row saying Ted Cruz is not eligible to be president of the United States. All fundraising for Cruz's campaign would instantly dry up, and he would be pressured from multiple sources to resign the nomination, particularly since his numbers in the polls, I think, would plummet dramatically at that point. If Ted Cruz as nominee is forced out, that does not automatically make the vice presidential choice the nominee for president. The party elders would decide who the new nominee would be. Karl Rove and company would pick perhaps Jeb Bush or Mitt Romney or Chris Christie, somebody from the establishment wing of the party. Everything that just happened in Iowa would be a moot point. Everything that's going to happen in New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, Super Tuesday, and here in Illinois would be wiped out. The elders of the party would pick the new nominee. And I am quite frankly terrified of such a scenario taking place.
Interesting, interesting. Now, back to the central argument of a natural-born citizen. Where is the argument? Where is the ambiguity in this whole thing?
Well, essentially, you're dealing with a term that the Supreme Court of the United States has touched on, although not to a great extent. And in fact, the Supreme Court has never had a case squarely before it as to whether or not a particular person is eligible to the office of president. But in the recommendation of the hearing officer to the full board, State Board of Elections here in Illinois, the hearing officer cited one reason and one reason only for denying my objection, namely that Ted Cruz has been a citizen since birth and that therefore he must be a natural-born citizen of the United States. Now, that's strictly contrary to a filing that I made previously in this case, in which I quoted the Supreme Court of the United States from a case in 1898 known as United States versus Wong Kim Ark, a fellow who was born to Chinese parents here in the United States. And I pointed out in my statement to the board and in response to the hearing officer, something that I had quoted from the Supreme Court, and allow me to quote that. The Supreme Court said, "A person born out of the jurisdiction of the United States can only become a citizen by being naturalized, either by treaty, as in the case of annexation of foreign territory, or by the authority of Congress, exercised either by declaring certain classes of persons to be citizens, as in the enactments conferring citizenship upon foreign-born children of citizens, or by enabling foreigners individually to become citizens by proceedings in the judicial tribunals, as in the ordinary provisions of the Naturalization Acts." So the hearing officer said he's been a citizen since birth, and he didn't have to go through naturalization proceedings. Here we have a statement in black and white from the Supreme Court of the United States saying that becoming a citizen either by going through the normal judicial proceedings, the way most people do to become a naturalized citizen, or by an act of Congress conferring citizenship on those born abroad to U.S. citizen parents. Either one is naturalization. So the argument's already been looked at by the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of the United States has already made an unequivocal statement on point. So what are we talking about here? Where's the argument?
So what you're saying here, Lawrence, is that from what we know, he is an American citizen, but he's never been formally naturalized. Is that what you're saying?
No, he was naturalized at birth by an act of Congress, by statute of Congress. You can become naturalized either by going through the, as the court said, proceedings in the judicial tribunals, as in the ordinary provisions of the Naturalization Acts. The other way that the court said would be, quote, by authority of Congress, exercised by declaring certain classes of persons to be citizens, as in the enactments conferring citizenship upon foreign-born children of citizens. Either one is naturalization. So Ted Cruz is a citizen of the United States, but according to the Supreme Court of the United States, in its expressly stated terms, he is a naturalized citizen of the United States, and he is not a natural-born citizen of the United States. The case would be different, the court noted, if somebody was born to parents who were abroad and on an official mission of the United States government.
I'm slow coming to the party here. I'm getting it now. All right. So
in other words, John McCain, who was born to parents, his father was stationed in the Panama Canal Zone on an official mission of the United States as being, an officer in the U.S. Navy. Since John McCain's father was on an official mission of the U.S. government, the Supreme Court would consider him to be one of the only exceptions to the rule about being born outside of the United States and yet being a natural-born citizen. But Ted Cruz's parents were there on business in Canada. They weren't there on behalf of the United States government. So according to the Supreme Court's own terms, Ted Cruz cannot be a natural-born citizen.
Very interesting. Okay, well, you know the president's loving this because the birthday issue's gone over to a Republican. Why are you for Carson? Quickly, why are you for Carson?
Well, you may notice a few things about Dr. Carson. For instance, you rarely see him in the debates with his hands below his waist. That comes from 30 years of being prepared for surgery and holding your hands up high so that the water drips down away from your fingers onto your arms. Another thing you may have noticed about him is that he very frequently, very commonly has a very serious demeanor and has to make a point of smiling when he does smile. And there's a reason for that as well. He has spent 30 years in the operating room, operating on the brains of small children. And mom and dad were in the waiting room down the hall. And he realized that if anything went wrong in surgery, he would have to go down the hall and tell them, "I'm sorry, but your son didn't make it." Or he would have to say, "I'm sorry, but your daughter didn't make it." as he pointed out, he has had to make more 2 o'clock in the morning emergency life and death decisions in his lifetime than the entire rest of the Republican field combined. I'm going to add something to what Dr. Carson himself said. As you can see in the movie Gifted Hands, which was the 2009 made-for-TV movie about his life story, he was so concerned for the well-being of these 2 German twins who were born joined at the head. And he was so concerned about the fact that they would have to spend the rest of their lives in bed if somebody couldn't operate then on them, that he made the decision, based upon what he thought it would be like for him if this had happened to his sons. He made the decision to go ahead with the surgery to separate them, even though it had never been the case ever that anyone had successfully separated such twins and that both of them had lived, because in all such surgeries, one or both twins would die. But he made the commitment to go ahead with that, and he just looked to God in prayer for the answer. After he made the commitment, it suddenly dawned on him one evening to take a procedure from one aspect of brain surgery and use that same procedure in the procedure he was going to use to separate the twins. Now, the next president of the United States is going to be faced with a $19 to $20 trillion debt. Is going to be faced with dealing with ISIS, is going to be faced with dealing with a nuclear Iran, is going to be faced with dealing with Russia in Syria and in Ukraine, and is going to be faced with North Korea, possibly now with a hydrogen bomb. And the kind of person we need behind that desk in the Oval Office come January 2017 is the kind of person that Dr. Ben Carson has shown that he is. And that is why I'm voting for Dr. Ben Carson for president.
Very compelling, Lawrence, very compelling. I want to get you back. This is very interesting. By the way, your website is 888webtoday.com, is that right?
888webtoday.com. You can find columns that I've placed on that website there.
Okay. Well, thanks for being with us today and explaining this naturalization issue. I never quite heard explained the way you have delivered it today. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write some follow-up questions. We'll get you back.
That'd be good. That'd be good.
Have a great day. Nice to see you.
Thank you much.
Okay. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.